let's nail that down a little bit. One of the early commitments was to have us at least preliminary budget numbers by the end of this month. Where does this recent change, how does that affect that date for having a preliminary budget numbers to us?
Well, I mean, ideally, it's like, well, yeah, I think that because we have quarterly reports from our clerk as far as how we are for the budget, and whether on budget, over budget, under budget. I got some in my file here, an example from when we had ours from January to March. Yeah, I mean, for my goal is that we got June is done, so Lori is probably going to have a summary.
Lori has given us that.
Oh, she's already doing that?
Yes, we got that last week. The intention was that we can provide a budget. We have the January to end of June figures. So we have real figures for what we expect. So for the first half of the year. But it's not my job to create a budget. I mean, if you want to look at throw a dart at a dartboard, look at the budget that we use for the referendum.
Well, yes, I understand that, and you're not wrong. But we also talked earlier that preliminary budget for 26 would be provided by the end of July, and that would be a much better view of it than what was presented for the referendum. So that's kind of what we're looking at, the preliminary, and then I think we're talking, I don't remember, September for hard numbers. So even a preliminary budget will help us make some decisions, and because one of the things we are looking at is potential, and we have to do our due diligence, look at what can potentially partnering with other districts, and please don't take that as a threat, because we want to make this work. I think it's in the best interest of everybody, the village, the town, our constituents, response time, et cetera, to continue operating and acquiring EMS together. If that's the right language, okay, customer, whatever. Staying together, I think, for everybody is the best. But we've got a budget we have to do, as Josh was saying as well. So at some point, we have to have somewhat realistic expectation what the numbers are, so we can compare that to what our options are potentially elsewhere. And that's not an avenue we want to take, but it's an avenue we have to reserve throughout this, as we were talking about. If the numbers just go up to where we can't afford it, then it'll become a discussion we can find lower cost elsewhere. Then it's a decision for our constituents to make. Want to save some money and have longer response times, or spend more and have the fastest response times possible. And that's probably a decision we'll leave to the constituents, not us. So that's just the whole process. So certainly we do understand the situation you're in, that very bad timing with the recent resignation. But at the same time, we still have to push forward. And you guys, I'm not saying that you do that. And as soon as possible, get some, whatever realistic numbers, whatever that means, at least preliminarily, to have those numbers so we can do our due diligence. So as soon as you can get that to us, until we hear differently, we'll just assume it's still the end of the month, and if that changes, you'll let us know.
Sure. And if you guys do decide to go someplace else, when will we find out about it, so that we can budget, do our budget?
You would know about it the same day or next day. But at the end of the day, that's why the time crunch is there. Because we're just not going to be able to switch to somebody else like that. And that's why we talked early on in the discussions, why we wanted to start much earlier than we did. Certainly understood the referendum situation, but to just being totally open and honest, we're at crunch time to make any sort of decision like that.
Well, I guess my reason for asking that is because if you're saying that you're going to end up asking your constituents at your public hearing, that's when that decision would be made, which would be in November.
I'm assuming we could call a special referendum, so it wouldn't necessarily happen.
Yeah, it's just,
why we all should be, and I know we are, I'm not saying the village isn't. That's why we all have to continue working as quickly as possible to figure this out.
It's just, with some of that stuff that we've stated before, it's like, we're not gonna know certain numbers until
Understood, we have
October, November, so
we have the
we've got
same-
we got obviously more overhead employees and whatnot, insurance costs, I mean, I don't know when, or whatever, you get word from your insurance company that you deal with. But, I think Lori said we would get ours till October. It's like, but she's, I think she was kind of telling us that it's like, well, just figure on 13-15% increase, whether it's health or other insurance or, some of that stuff, so it's kind of like,
I certainly hope that you guys don't think that we are looking for a specific singular number in July at this point that is going to be your budget. I'll speak for myself, I would generally assume Rob's in the same boat. If there is a well-educated anticipation, right, to your point of 13 to 15% health insurance, that's my, make that assumption so we know what it is. Right? If it comes back at 13.4 or 15.1, you're not talking. You're not talking about $6 million worth of insurance.
no, but
And in the overall impact, yes, it's money, but the overall impact of that is not going to sink the boat if you're close. If you budget 5 and you really anticipated 18, you're probably going to be a little irritated with that part. But like I said, a reasonably educated anticipation of what it is. Part of where my reservation is that you guys have been over budget by $100,000 for each of the last 3 years. So if the budget this year is $677,000, is it really going to come back at $777,000? That's my reservation, and that is why I'm saying a reasonably educated anticipation of what your budget is. Because I understand 20 years worth of municipal work that you sometimes have to fake numbers in a budget if you're going to play the peanut under the helmet game, right? Like, it's your department, whether it goes for Band-Aids or boxes, it's your budget. Like, I understand that part of it. My concern is that if you're really running a department $100,000 a year more than the budget, that's got long-term implications for everybody, obviously. You felt that the last 2 years as far as using fund balance to balance your budget. Sooner or later, said at your combined meeting, borrowing for operational costs is the dumbest thing anybody could ever do. And I am concerned, and like I said, I know there was 35 grand for McMahon, there was 15 grand for legal, and there was this and there was that. I know there's unexpected vehicle costs, but at some point in time, normalizing that budget to whatever it might be, and I get that there's been operational staffing changes in that 2-year period as well. A completely different animal running out the door. Again, $445,000 was the anticipated 2022 budget. Where those numbers came from, we talked about that. Were they close or were they not? Was it off by 50 grand to start? Generally, I would say yeah, because your budget for 23 ended up being 510. So, like 5-10%, I get that change. But to be another $100,000 beyond what the budget was is where my concern is. Because whether it's a 1-year contract for 2026 and an extension to figure out, let you guys figure out your staffing, who's going to be where, how that's all going to work, move through 26 and continue this conversation, I think that has to be, like I said in January, that we have to look at a 5 to 10 year outlook for this thing for the community, and whether or not we can, number 1, sustain it financially, or number 2, sustain it from an employee standpoint and staffing. I know that there's been discussion about neighboring departments and districts, and that they're also looking for help. And it kind of makes me wonder, are we, as a cooperative regional thing, better off potentially from either a staff standpoint? It may cost the same, but you might not have to look for firefighters and EMTs every day of the week, all 52 weeks of the year, to look at that structure, and that takes time, and it takes input, and it takes evaluation, and it takes more than 4 months to do that between now and the end of the year. I'm not saying we're gonna do that for 26, but I think we need to address that fact with the budget and the costs and the overruns that go on. I mean, that's, there's not that much there in my mind that you have $100,000 worth of catastrophic capital costs on an annual basis. I mean, that's 15% of the budget, it's gigantic, and if it is, then, you know, I would hope we start addressing the equipment issues as a whole, along with things like building, all of the rest of the stuff that goes into it, but it's a huge amount. To just dig back through your budget to financial transaction details from quarterly, we asked for mid-year and end of year for 23, 4, and so far first quarter. Right? And that's what I mean. Last night I spent time and tried to summarize 75 pages worth of financial data into a one-page spreadsheet, so that I can look at it and actually interpret what's going on. And there's no doubt about it that it's $100,000 a year. I don't know if that's ever been addressed from a, we don't care, we gotta provide service, because at some point, like I get that, at some level, you guys have to provide service, whatever that cost ends up being. There's a due diligence that goes with that, but I don't know, I'm not looking at you, because obviously it's not your decision on what your budget is, and eventually, but you know, that to me is a huge strategic part of what's the next steps, you know, like down the road.
Well, one of the things related to down the road is when we had our joint meeting during the winter, we did agree that once we got this contract put to bed, we need to be looking to go jointly to other districts and just take a look at what is the 5 to 10 year outlook for this department and other districts around us. What's the most feasible for the whole community? Not that we would look to do that, but just have a 5 or 10 year plan on how we're going to continue to operate, and hopefully operate a strong fire and EMS department within this community, both village and town. So the only way you do that is to look at all the options and see what is the best long-term option, not for us, but for community constituents. So that's something we have already agreed to take a look at. Probably need to start doing that as soon as we figure this out.
You address that, or not comfortable?
Not yet, because I haven't been able to dive deep into it yet. I mean, I have been looking at it, but
Now's the opportunity to have everybody together. Now's the opportunity to ask the questions.
I think I've been relatively straightforward in what my concern is. More so from not taking anything away from Robin Frank, but the last 2 budgets primarily I've been the ringleader of organization costs. So the sooner we know, we have a relatively educated estimation type of thing, where we can start putting our side together. Because we don't have a fund balance. We don't, not one that's gonna cover that kind of increase, $130,000. We don't have that kind of fund balance to be able to bridge the gap that was used in technically December 22 or 2023. So we've got, in my own mind, I don't know what your fund balance position is. General fund, 800 fund, if they're segregated, different. We got a way bigger lift for this thing than I think you guys may give credence to be able to do this. And a 1 year patch, I don't think is really a smart play. I'll say leadership, however, whoever you wanna put that on their shoulders, whether it's village clerk as well, treasurer positions, as head of budget finance, if you guys step up in the vacuum and, you know, do the diligence that needs to be done to put something together, because I mean, it's 42%, 48% of the budget funding too, like, if we walk away and take it the wrong way, I don't know how you guys fund it either. At least long term, you know, so this is an us problem or an us issue that we need to figure out together. And if there's more informal meetings, I know Rob's been talking to Tim and all that. I mean, if you want to be the budget nerds together, I'm fine with that too. You know, there's no way around it at this point. We need service, you guys need service, somebody's gonna provide it, we don't have a fire station, let's be honest. We've got options, but we don't wanna make a knee-jerk reaction.
No, I mean, we've been eating into our fund balance over the course of time too, it's like when we, you know, when we have a contract, we have, you know, we've hit this before as far as, you know, towns has paid what is in the current contract, but we have been, whether it's, any kind of, it's like over the last 3 years, we've filled up over 100, last 3 years. Almost $400,000 have been coming out of the villages that have been filling that hole, and we can't keep doing that. That's why if we truly do this, you know, follow the percentage, you know, like I said, it goes back to the 3-year contract that we're in right now. However, James came up with those numbers, and I know that.
I have no idea how.
I think you know, I know Lori found the PowerPoint.
Yeah, but I still have no idea how he came up with it.
Yeah, that, and how he came up with those numbers, I mean, Tom is paid
Their contract.
what they're contracted to pay, even though in the contract it says that there's a percentage. We never pursued that, because we figured out we're just gonna stick with what we agreed to. And like I said, it's, during this contract, like I said, we're at almost 400,000 that the village taxpayers have filled that hole. So I understand it's gonna be a big jump for you. So it's not that as I explained to you the last meeting, I wanna make sure that it's fair to all the taxpayers, not just, you know, town or village. I mean, I don't wanna take advantage of anybody. I wanna make sure that the service that we're providing, and the way we've been doing is what we provide the village, is what we provide the town, and granted, over the last couple of years, we've changed the model a little bit. Maybe there might be another way of doing it. There's something that first thing that you came to us the other day was like trying to get some interest from high schoolers. Start some program there, get some, get interest in the high school, and get some more fresh blood in the system as they get older or whatever like that. If there's other ideas, hey, we're open for. We still have that sign up for volunteers, but once again, volunteers still have to go through all that training and licensing, and it's kind of like, you might as well just pay them versus volunteer where it was before, it was fine.
I mean, if there's an instance in your mind where you think you're gonna volunteer your way out of this,
No, it's not.
like, we need to have a serious discussion while you're standing in it, because it ain't gonna happen.
No,
I understand that, I'm gonna call it an apprenticeship, for lack of a better term. An apprenticeship is an awesome thing to do. That also is not gonna solve the problem.
No, but it's
Because-
people involved.
I understand that, and that's my point, is that it is a worthwhile endeavor, but I'm hopeful and eyes wide open. Like this year, your budget this year is $172,000 in the hole. Of that 400 you covered, it's 172. It's a third of what you're looking at, a little more than that. So, like that's the part where I'm concerned that bells didn't start ringing before. Like the first year between what was theoretical and what the budget was adopted, I'm gonna call it $55,000 maintenance, right? The year after that, you were at 90. And this year you're at 170. Like that step is getting bigger and bigger
Can I
every
make a
single
point on
year.
that number?
Sure, yeah.
So, the fire budget, the 800 budget was 107. But the police department budget, which is part of the whole, because of the fact that we put full-time fire, because we no longer had the police that had been providing the EMS service, we were under by 88. So cut that 172 account. Does that make sense?
Financially, I 100% understand what you're saying. I 100% understand what you're saying. So to that point, it cost you $80,000 more this year to do the exact same thing you did last year. Except now you don't have a police department full time. Like that's the trade-off part of this. And I'm trying not to argue internal politics of the village because it's your community, your municipality, right? The model of having, and I understand the shortcomings or shortfalls of either system, right? One of them is we need more people and it costs more to do it. On the flip side is you're running the people you have rated, and you might still not have the people that you have to do it. The trade-off was, let's be frank, the trade-off was it was the cheapest solution to do both. And it's, in my mind, it still is. The cheapest solution to provide 24/7 coverage for public safety service in the village is a combined public safety plan. We don't have the service area, whether it's equalized value, if you want to call it that, or the number of calls to run. That two separate. You cut the departments in half, and you said, okay, now we've got fire and EMS, and now we've got police. And you then had to staff both of them full-time, theoretically. You're then staffing both of them 24/7, 365. That costs just double. You still need the same amount of people for 24/7 clock, right? But now you've got two clocks that you gotta manage. And that's the part that, again, I have a concern with as far as the bells going off and that type of thing. The point of peanut under the helmet, I understand that a portion, theoretically, a portion of what we were paying for as town residents was police coverage, because the staff migrated from one job to another within a shift, right? You could be an EMT at 1 minute, you could be a LEO pulling somebody over the speed. Like, I understand you're one person and you can't take this the penny weight. You can't make 2 pennies out of 1 penny. You can rub 2 nickels together, but so from a strategic standpoint, we 100% are your financial partner and your service partner, right? And that's the part where let's get past adversarial things and whatever and figure out how the hell to make this work. Financially, from a staffing standpoint, administratively, however all comes together, because Palmyra is Palmyra, whether it's a village in the town or not. It's one response area, it's one community, 2 different municipalities. It is what it is. When you get to the point of putting a budget together, again, some of my concern is potential for consultant fees and potential for legal fees. I get that it's an overall, if you ran, again, John's disposal, and your driver ran into somebody, and you've got litigation, I understand that's part of John's overall cost of service, providing the service. I would like to look specifically at that information, one way or the other, either retroactively. I've got at least 2 years worth of it. But to potentially cut part of that out of what the town's cost may or may not be. Because at the end of the day,
No doubt about that.
we don't make the staffing decisions. We don't have a seat at your public safety committee or PFC or any of that kind of stuff. So the decisions from an operational staffing standpoint and the administrative ones that follow are 100% village. Not that I don't understand that part of operating a municipal department is having legal fees, I get that, we've got our own. But I like to think that your resulting legal fees and this potential professional consulting fees are yours to run that department, because the decisions that you make.
And it'd be different if we were partners. We were just one community, but if we're a customer, then Josh is 100% for it. Decisions are being made that impact us, but we have no input. So those type of decisions should be on the village, because of the potential costs incurred. But that's all part of what has to be worked out, put in, let's have to figure out the values.
On a private sector side of the universe, John's makes a profit, right? But their whole thing is to make a profit. I understand you guys can't make a profit. So when John says litigation, when anybody who's listening, this isn't a thing against John's, it's just they're close and provide service. So they use their fund balance, right, or their profit margin to cover things that are unforeseen, drug replacement, legal battles, consolidation, buying out a company, whatever it is, they use those things. You guys have a fund balance, but that fund balance isn't really a profit margin in the same aspect that you utilize it for. So
I look at it as a savings account, that's like, it's our household rainy day fund.
Right.
Yeah, okay, well, do a little bit more.
I'm blunt, it's an OSHA fund.
Ideally, you would wanna, go into it every single year. It's
correct.
just-
Yeah, 100% understand, but like those are some of the things on the internal part of your budget that we really don't have any say on, right? Because if you're working on a budget, you're hopefully gonna provide us with another reasonably educated expectation of what the budget is. Those are some of the things in looking back over the last 2.5 years that I get that you hate $400,000 of those costs. 65 of them, quite frankly, don't take this the wrong way, I don't care. Because I didn't make those decisions. I'm not even saying you guys did, because I don't know that you guys were on board when you guys made those decisions. But those are some of the things that I would be concerned if we were doing as a town board too, to say, well, you know.
I would certainly take that into consideration as far as look at numbers.
You can ask this question.
So.
I will extend again. If you want to do numbers and not administrative, let me know, because I think the faster we work through this, we'll probably even learn some things, you know, about what it is or what it's for. Luckily, I've got 12 years worth of pre-knowledge about the village budgets before that, but things change and I get it. So,
No, they don't.
well,
Do you have anything you guys want to bring up? I think we're, one thing I want to get back to, but overall, I think, anything you guys want to bring up?
Right now, I don't think so. I mean, it's just a matter of working with the new administration to see where
Alright,
they wanna go, and then that should definitely help with start
Make that help.
putting things in the numbers for the budget and so.
the only one thing I want to go back to is the formula, adding population to it as well. We already said we needed to get all the numbers and plug them in and agree what those numbers are. But just to show everybody how important that is, last time we looked at these numbers, and it had the, with population, it had the town's percent, and these were not final numbers, these were just numbers, right? Preliminary numbers, but it was just under 47%, Josh's numbers showed 49%. So that's just, we have to get together and decide what those numbers are, what we're gonna plug in from a population, from an equalized value, from a call perspective, and get that number down. Because numbers can, depending on what you do, can come out anything. We just have to very quickly come up with, whether it's the next meeting or one after that, I think that nails down as well.
Well, if you're looking at the call volume, was value population, just, this can help a little bit. When we're talking about call volume, obviously, we have seen call volumes for this year. So, from my point of view, we can use 2025, but obviously we're not gonna have the full year. So, do you have a problem with saying, okay, we use January through October, by 10, multiplied by 12, or just, just a simple,
That's just what we have to figure out. I agree.
punch the numbers a little bit.
I mean, we could do 6 months worth right now.
Yeah.
I don't have the number right now, but we have the number.
Yeah, but I'm saying for like a final,
Yeah.
this is what the percentage is gonna be. I mean, we definitely know we're gonna get a good solid number from the Department of Revenue or Administration, whichever gives us those numbers. I don't know. Is it administration or is it
Which one,
revenue?
the population?
Equalized value.
That comes from the
Revenue, okay. Sometimes I don't know if it's.
Yeah, that's revenue. Blue Book is how I came up with the populations, I believe. But I did update it to what the census reported for 2023, I believe. Because I just searched on Palmyra population and 1242 is what popped up, and that's what I have on.
So, I mean, if it's any consolation, the current contract, use 2021 data, and the call volume for the town was 35.98%. So we use 2024, it was 35.19%.
Pretty consistent.
We're less than 1%
Pretty
variance between 2 years that are 4 years apart. So if population has anything to do with it, the age of population, like 4 years hasn't really affected that much. I don't know that 6 months of 2025, I think would probably actually skew the numbers to be more random than using a 3-year average and saying, okay, instead of 233 calls, we've got 699 calls, and I mean, if the numbers are what they are.
That's what I'm just saying, like, as far as, if we're gonna use the call line for 25, these are actual numbers that we know that we have, and then just extrapolate out those last couple, so that way we just say, here's the percentage.
Well, we should have this as an agenda item for our next get together on the 24th, try to nail it down on that. And,
Are you guys open to the idea of a 1-year extension? And by extension, I mean, yes, assuming there will be a cost of service difference.
Just do it one for 2026 you're talking about?
Correct.
I'd have to see what my board would want.
I would be interested for a number of different things. Number one, we talked about, you guys are kind of in a flux state at the moment. I get it, I understand it. There's gonna be enough frying pan to fire movement going on with that, as it is much less any of this. And I think that it would be strategic of both municipalities to look at 2027, coming with 7 elected representatives on what we do. I get you just got elected in April, so I understand the burden of being new and trying to wrap your head around the budget that maybe not financial sense.
why don't you talk about that, and we can kick that around next meeting.
Now, when you're talking 1-year extension, you're talking the current contract,
With an increase in price.
Yeah, I mean, rather than a 2-year contract, I mean, a 1-year.
We would do everything we've talked about so far as potential
I'm just
changes.
saying, I'm just saying, use the word extension, so I just want to make sure that, it's not the current one, and we're just going forward 1 year.
What the work we put into it.
Okay, just want to clarify.
No, great question. Valid
I
question.
mean, there's security in both, and there's security in both, right? There's security that you kind of know what you're in for, and I get that from a budgetary perspective, and